questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing. All right, so that being said, we got zone 1, and we're gonna begin with Daphne.
So I have a quick one. It's a Passover, an easy one that I've just never come up against before. So I'm definitely, obviously taking all the leaven out of my house and everything, and I understand what that is, but I'm having someone to house sit my house while taking care of my dog while I'm gone. So do I need to ask, so after I've gotten everything out of my house and I've left the house and I'm here for the whole feast, do I need to tell that person not to bring any leaven in the house?
You certainly can. You can't control what you can't control. And so I'm not gonna worry about that. Do your job on your house. You can ask and say, hey, listen, I took all this stuff out of the house. I'd prefer if you didn't bring it in. You won't be able to stop them if they do, but but you're not gonna be living there at the time. So that's gonna be the situation. So that's the best you can do with that, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. I was glad to see you made it.
It's good to see you, Rabbi.
Okay, you gotta put it right up by your mouth.
It's good to see you. Shabbat Shalom Mishpachah. Thank you. It's really good to see you in person instead of on the screen. It's been a rough 2 months. What's my question? I have a lot of questions, but this pertains to...
I have a lot of answers. I hope they match.
You help more than anybody ever has, Rabbi. The last 2 months have been very difficult with the pain, and I know I asked you before about the pain and how it kind of makes you feel like you're failing in this walk because you're not doing what you think you should be doing, like showing up here to Shabbat.
Okay, hold on. Let me interrupt with that.
Okay.
Because I think everybody needs to hear this, because a lot of people have this problem, okay? It is my belief, because I believe that our Creator is very logical. I think he's very reasonable, very rational, okay? Has the abundance of wisdom beyond measure, that he would not cause you to have some sort of negative thing in your life that's because of something that you need to fix without making it very clear what that is, okay? So don't naturally just jump to that conclusion, this bad stuff is happening in my life, so I must be doing something wrong. Now, you should ask the question from it's just simply, maybe I'm doing something wrong, let me just take a quick look. But if you can't connect it to something really obvious and specific, okay, and the kind of pain that you're going through should be something major to get your attention, if that's what he was doing, then it's not about that. It's just something that's happening in your system, which we know kind of where some of this came from and what happened and all that kind of stuff, okay? So, especially if you kind of know the source of the problem, okay, or at least when it started, what might have contributed to it, let's not beat ourselves up so much, okay? You guys have become real good at beating yourselves up, okay? Let's not do that anymore. I want you to examine yourself, and that was good. So you were looking to say, hey, is there anything I've been doing that maybe is the problem?
Right.
Okay? And I'm telling you that I don't think there's anything you're doing that would be connecting the dots to this particular level of problem, okay? I think it's much more of a physical, of the flesh, medical, whatever thing. It's not a spiritual thing.
It's hard not to go there.
Because you feel bad that you're not here. You feel bad that you're falling short. We all do that. Don't beat yourself up, though. Stop that.
Well, and it might be like the letters mixed with the colors.
What? Okay, where are your letters?
From what I've learned, I'm a E in...
FP?
Yes, I think it's a FJ.
FJ, ENFJ?
But I relate to the I more than the E, which is interesting, even though it's more dominant. So I don't know how that works, because you said it gets kind of complicated in situations.
It does get complicated in situations, because you have all 8 of the four functions in both directions, okay? Just some of them are much more mature.
Okay.
And so sometimes the less mature ones jump in, and that's where we get our negative behaviors or negative thought patterns, things that are not productive to you.
Yeah.
Okay? Is when usually something that's less mature or that has gone a little sideways, maybe it's one of your more mature ones, it's just not behaving well.
Yeah.
All right? But it's a common thing, regardless of how we want to get to this, whether it's through understanding your Myers-Briggs letters or your colors or whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is we can see in society, when you talk to people, people do have a tendency to have a higher level of emotional response compared to intellectual response. And they have a higher level of self-loathing, self-beating up, blame, self-attack than maybe we've had in some generations. When I was growing up, I don't remember any of my friends ever saying they were depressed. Now I think growing up, every kid talks about how they're depressed and their friends are depressed and everybody's depressed. Maybe they were and they just never talked about it, but I just don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's changed generationally. Things have altered, okay? And the things where children are doing things to themselves and the cuttings and the wanting to, as they say, unalive themselves or whatever the politically correct phrase is, has increased a lot.
Yeah.
Which is why I like that we do a lot more of this therapeutic personal development things, because I want you to understand not only why you do what you do, but how to fix it. You have to stop this self-attacking, blame, shame, whatever, okay? So you want to be here. You know that you're supposed to be here, but you can't sometimes. And so instead of being, it is what it is, you beat yourself up, okay? And you blame, and then you feel guilty and shame and failure and all these other terrible things. Stop that, okay? I don't know how else to say it, but like a parent to say, stop it. Don't do that to yourself, okay?
It gets hard, and so this
You gotta keep it right up here.
So there was stuff that added to it. Right. So I was having the pain, and then I got my first rejection, which I asked you about, and I haven't really been able to be tested in this way because I've been shut up for 3 years. So nobody really cared in my old walk in Christianity. They never came to see me, and so I lost a friend, 2 people. They walked away from me because they think I'm Jewish now. I had a friend die that was there when me and my husband met and kind of encouraged it. And then I had a pet die. And it makes you think of Job.
Sure.
It makes you think of anybody who is kind of like attacked over and over again. And I don't want to like make it like some spiritual attack or sometimes.
Well, if you're gonna look at it like Job, then you have to react like Job.
Well, so I've been feeling like I'm judging myself like his wife was judging him. Like, why aren't you cursing God and dying already?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that made me think that it does make you go there, like that Yah's disappointed with you or that you're cursed in some way. And I want to please him so much.
Right, but just realize the only one that came up with that thought is you. It's not his thought, it's your thought, okay? And if anybody else put that thought in you, then shame on them. Okay, but that's your thought. You've decided, you've judged yourself. You assume he's judging you, but he's not. You're judging you.
So how do you, because I'm trying to, the reason I pushed I'm in so much pain today, and I thank all the mishpachah that got me ice and were helping me with all the little things to help me deal with my pain.
Right.
I came because I didn't want to be in my feelings because I was at system overload. And after my pet died, it was just like, oh yeah, you're cursed. You're definitely cursed because this is just not getting better. And I didn't want to be in my feelings, and I needed to push myself to be here.
Right. So wait, hold on. So let's look at this a little bit differently. So first of all, from the letters, you have a real FI problem, okay? It's your introverted feeling that's causing you all this critical self-judgment and everything else. Wherever that is in your mix, I'm just saying that's where the problem is. But you're not looking at this with the broad enough perspective. You're in all this pain, but you know what? You're here.
Right.
There's a lot of people watching right now that wish they could trade places with you. They're not here. But you're here, okay?
But
there's other people like your
been.
friends that passed
Yeah.
that are not alive anymore, but you're alive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the perspective shift that has to be there, okay? You're mostly looking at what you're disappointed in that you don't have instead of appreciating that you still have so much more perspective-wise than a lot of people,
Right.
all right? You know, you have a husband that loves you. A lot of people want to have a husband that loves them,
Yeah.
okay? I'm just saying is you have some things that are advantages
Right.
that if you would focus on them more, you wouldn't beat yourself up so much. I'm not saying you wouldn't have the pain, but you wouldn't be increasing the pain by emotionally adding more pain.
So is there like a thought process that I can go through? Because when it gets piled is when, because I've done a lot of mental work over the years, just from all my other drama and stuff that I've been through in my life. So I had to do the mental work, and I know I can't let my emotions drive. I love it when you say that, because my depression and everything used to lead me to what you were just talking about before, what all the kids are going through.
All right.
So I relate to that.
All right. So do this, because it's a reprogramming, right, that you need to do here.
Right.
I want you to first write down on something you can carry around with you, 5, 8, 10, whatever, strong things that you appreciate, okay? Positive things that you have that you can appreciate.
About myself?
About yourself, about your situation. Not just yourself, but, you're in a lot of pain, but you got a husband. You live where you can come and see us. Whatever positive things that you have. A simple thing is this: I'm still alive. So I can still do more. Things can still get better, right? So write down some strong things that you can say, yes, these are things I can appreciate, all right? There's a lot of things you don't appreciate, and those are the things you focus on. Let's write down some things you appreciate. And then what I want you to do is take that out maybe once an hour in the beginning to really remind yourself. And I want you to try to add something new to the list each time you pull it out. Okay? So the list should keep getting longer when you pull it out. Read what you got there and think, okay, what else could I feel good about? What else could I be optimistic about? What else can I appreciate? And then I can add to the list, okay?
So like the concept of like showing yourself that you have more, like the teeter-totter.
Right, you have to balance out this abundance of thoughts that you have. Okay, think of it this way. If you have an idea, all right? Tony Robbins does this sort of model. If you have an idea, and that idea is something you just thought of once, it'd be like, imagine a tabletop with one leg randomly placed and it's not very stable. There's no strength to that idea. But once you've convinced yourself of an idea and thought about it and pondered it for months and months or years and years, it's like that table has 100 legs. It's like a rock. You can stand on it, jump on it, that thing is solid. So what happens is you have to start to pull the legs out of the bad ones and start building yourself some new table ideas with lots of legs on them, okay? That's kind of how you have to balance this out. Because you have a really strong belief about all this awful things, because you've been dealing with it for a couple of years now, and it's just been very intrusively real in your life, okay? And so that's been the problem. So I want you to find a way to bring to awareness.
I like that.
Actually, things aren't so bad. Yeah, they're not great, but I've got some things that are really not bad. Things that I can appreciate, things that are good, things that I enjoy, things that I'm blessed with that other people might not have. We need to perspective shift, okay?
And visually see it. So
Visually
you're not just in your head all the time. I
Right.
like that.
And then you probably got more S than N because your S is in the now, okay? The sensory stuff is now. And you're very in now. Now I'm in pain. Now this is bad. Now I'm miserable. Now I'm not able to go outside. Now,
It's
right?
very demanding.
Right. Okay, but still, it keeps you in that present moment where you're not able to think future, but it's going to be better. And this is going to work out. And there's a possibility. Your possibilities have been shut off. You're not thinking about possibilities anymore.
Right.
Okay?
You're very much.
You're much in the now.
Yes.
Okay? Instead of asking, oh, if I if I wanted to, what could I appreciate? If I could think about things, change your approach.
Right.
Instead of just being now sucks and I'm in pain and I'm not happy and I'm not doing what I want to do and I can't do what I want to do. And that's going to cause more pain than anything else as you're locked in. You got to open that up.
And it always weighs more when you think that way.
And then people are like, well, why are you talking about all this stuff on Torah? Because then it goes back to the problem is that she thought it was a spiritual problem.
Right.
And it's going to create a spiritual problem for you if you can't fix it, because it's hampering your relationship with him, because he's like, I'm not mad at you, but you're mad at you. That's not good for our relationship.
Right, right.
Because then you're not trusting him and believing him when he says, I'm not mad at you.
Well, and you don't want to feel cursed in this.
Okay.
Like, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
No, that's good, Rabbi. Thank
Okay,
you. No,
good.
I will do that. I do always have more questions, but no, that was my main question.
Let's look at, from Scripture, okay? There is cursing that's done, right? But does cursing get done just because somebody messes up? When does cursing get done? As a last resort of trying to get your attention and it's not been working and you stubbornly refuse, right? Okay. So you're not going to be cursed that quickly over whatever. And we also know kind of a little bit about what may have caused some of this. Yeah. And that was a decision that just was a mistake, okay? Yeah. And so, but that was a medical problem, right, not a spiritual problem.
Right.
Okay? And so let's embrace that reality and stop looking for some outside other thing. Okay? This is not about your relationship with him. I think you're probably in pretty good shape there, okay? Okay. As much as any of us is, all right?
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate you guys, and I love all of you, and thank you so much for helping me through this. It really means a lot.
Well, listen, I'm glad you brought it up, because you're probably one of several hundred that are listening right now that are dealing with something similar. Okay?
I have related to everybody who talks about their pain. And
okay? And it doesn't have to be their pain. It means just their life is not what they think it should be, and they're suffering on some level. It doesn't have to be physical pain.
Right.
It could be any pain.
Definitely.
Then they start thinking, what did I do? He's mad at me. I'm cursed. I hear this a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to say, now everybody else listening, take what I told her and use it also. Some of you might need to take that paper out and read it literally not just once a day, but every hour. Yeah. At least until it starts having an effect. And maybe you take it out less times a day, but just keep reminding yourself, Definitely. We used to do this little thing with the children at night before going to bed, is we used to go around the family and say, tell us something you appreciate. Well, I appreciate you, Daddy, or I appreciate you, Mom, or I appreciate, whatever, right? And it just gets a mindset.
Yeah.
So especially do this before you go to bed and when you first wake up. So you have your sleep in a certain focus, and when you start your day in a certain focus.
Counting sheep in a different way.
Well,
I like it.
They used to say count your blessings, right?
Yeah,
so
that's
count
good.
your blessings. That's, your blessings are the things you appreciate. These are blessings to you, right?
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I really appreciate it.
All right, awesome. Okay.
Bye, Mishpachah.
Thank you, Olivia. All right.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, Mishpachah, and Shabbat Shalom to Zone 2. You guys were awesome this morning, weren't they?
They were great.
And so this kind of sparked me on the subject of prayer, because it came up a couple times. And it isn't the first time that I've heard you say, it's really great. You want to pray for somebody and they're sharing a need with you, just to stop right there and offer prayer with them. And you did say that, right?
What I said was, all too often we'll say, I'll pray for you.
Yeah.
Why don't you just do it now?
Right, okay, so you threw down...
Because half the time you're going to forget anyway. If you don't do it right then, you're not going to remember.
That's not true of everyone.
Well, a lot of us won't remember. Certainly all of us intuitives are not going to remember, okay?
Well, I just love to pray for people. Mm-hmm. And I feel the compassion going out of me toward people all the time. And if I can't stop right then, I usually say, I'll ask Father to put you on my heart, so I can carry you in prayer. Because if I can't release the compassion I'm feeling through prayer, I could not do very well emotionally. So this has been true of me for years and years in Christianity, and it's still true for me now that I'm in Torah. I really have to pray for people. But I found with most people, so I felt you were throwing down a challenge, and I said, that is really great. But I find in this walk, most of the time, if I have offered in a sharing situation and somebody is, sharing with me something that's bothering them, and I'll say, could we pray? I'd be happy to pray for you right now. And I can tell most of the time it makes them very uncomfortable.
Right.
And so I've stopped doing that. I've stopped asking. Mostly I'll just say, I'll ask Father to put you on my heart, or, something like that. And he does. I just, to me, I know Father is not pleased if I say I'm going to pray for somebody and I don't remember to do it. My fear of Yahweh makes me pray, and I love to pray for people.
All right, hold on. So I tried to explain this today in the zone meeting, the zone 2. Look, all right, you're not wrong at all. I mean, there are absolutely people that will not be comfortable if you pray for them. Okay, more uncomfortable is if you offer to pray for someone who didn't ask. Okay, that also will make them even more uncomfortable. They mention something that's going on in their life that you think needs prayer, and you say, well, would you like me to pray for you? And that's an even more awkward thing. But understand this, for all of you that ask for prayer, you might be doing this all wrong. If you're not willing to have the person pray for you right there, then you're not asking for the right thing. Because what you should be wanting, as I said this morning, is you're looking for the encouragement of a person's heart being there with yours in empathy and sympathy for your situation. See, you're the ones who don't want to hear that. You guys are hoping we're going to leverage the outside authority to fix something. And so you don't want to hear the prayer. You just want a bunch of people praying for you so that the outside authority will come out and just magically fix things. You're doing this wrong, okay? You're doing this wrong. Why would you ask someone to pray for you if you don't want them to pray for you? Is that making any sense to anybody? That's why they're uncomfortable, because they don't want to have you actually talk about it in front of them and everything else. They want you to just go request the boss to go ahead and fix something and get as many people as they can to do that, thinking that that's going to leverage the problem to be fixed. And that's a wrong mindset. Okay? You guys have prayer all wrong in your heads. It's not the way it works. And I explained that this morning. If you missed it in zone 2, well, then you missed it. Well, now you're getting it again. All right, because Shira was nice enough to ask it again or bring it up again, all right? So, but this brings up a little bit different angle about the fact that some people don't want you to pray for them right there, and I get that. I should have brought that up this morning, but nobody really kind of brought that part of it in. That's why I love these open discussions, because more elements of something can be brought out. But if I'm going through something, I'm only going to ask you to pray because because I have a relationship with you, and I want to hear you empathize, and I want to hear your heart go before the Father on my behalf. Okay? All right? What you have to understand is we're not leveraging him. He already is going to do what he's going to do. Do we all not understand that? Whether you pray or don't pray. See, when I say whether you pray or don't pray, I mean the person who's not in the situation. What matters is you in the situation. Do you believe he can fix it? Do you believe you can have healing? Because remember, Yeshua said, your belief has made you well. Okay? My belief is in what's going to heal you. If it's your problem, my belief might heal me if it's my problem, right? And so the primary part about prayer is it shows the Father and it shows the person, if you're doing it in front of them, that you have a heart like he does to care about others. He's learning about how you feel. And Shira just said that she has this strong heart for everyone, and she loves to pray for people. That's what the Father is learning about her every time she does that, okay? And by the way, if people ask you to pray and you don't make an effort to do it, or and I do forget sometimes, but then I feel bad that I forget, and then I make sure to do it, because I can get easily distracted. But it's a matter of showing and demonstrating that you care. But see, I generally pray right then. Even if the person didn't ask me to do it in front of them, I will go ahead and pray right then, okay, as opposed to doing it later. Because I know that later can get very distracted, all right, for a lot of us. Maybe not for you, but there's there's others like you that also would keep it. But for some of us, it's very easy to get distracted. Like I get distracted on the way to a task and get distracted with something on the way to it, okay? So it just happens that way. But I think that, just so, maybe so we can understand, the person that doesn't want you to pray for them out loud in front of them is probably not asking for prayer properly. Okay, don't judge them. I'm just saying is they don't see it correctly yet. They've been brought through the Judeo-Christian system, and in that system, we're taught prayer in a different way. Okay? And so I don't think that's the way prayer works. I think Christianity kind of makes it sound like if enough of us pray, then we kind of force him to do it. Okay? Now, they don't think of it like forced. It's just like, well, if enough of us pray, he'll just do whatever we want. But he's not your magic genie if enough of us want to, stroke the lamp and then he'll go ahead and do whatever you want. Okay? It doesn't work that way. Okay? But I think the reason Paul, for example, encourages us in Ephesians after he talks about the armor, okay, is he says you need to pray for one another because it demonstrates your caring like he cares. We're supposed to emulate him for each other. So Abba's proud and feels good about you loving me enough to pray for me. Okay? Not about me hoping that all your prayers are going to fix my problem. Okay, my problem is between me and him, me and whatever the situation is. Okay? Your support encourages me, though, if you tell me you're going to pray for me, especially if you do it right there, okay, if I'm asking you. And I would never ask anybody for prayer if I didn't feel good about them doing it right there. Okay? Because why would I want them to do it later? I mean, that's really the question. If I want you to pray for me, why wouldn't I want you to do it now? If it's important enough to ask. Okay? Did that help at all?
Yes, it does. I have two more things that I'd like to say. The thing about prayer, one thing I experienced in the Christian walk, which I have not experienced yet here in the 12 years I've been here, that I valued was sincere friends. When we would pray for each other out loud, that encouragement created a tremendous level of bonding, and I miss that.
Right, and I think that probably not only is it the wrong understanding of prayer, because even where you were with the Christian side, they had the wrong understanding, but the thing is, we have a lot more insecurities, a lot more embarrassments and shames. We don't want to have that confront us out loud in a group or individually. So we're very happy for you to go privately somewhere and just pray for us. As a matter of fact, some of the people won't even give you the details to say, hey, can you pray for me? Because they don't want to deal with the details. So what is the level of your relationship compared to the ones you had back in Christianity where you could pray in front of each other and bond and be close enough to hear each other's real challenges, right? What the real issues are, and be open enough to share that and trusting enough to know that it's safe to share that. Okay, and sadly, that's not as common here in the Torah Observant Messianic walk because we have much more of the walking wounded here than maybe over there, percentage-wise, okay? I mean, they've got just as much as we do, but they've got a much bigger group and pool for it to get sort of diluted in. We have a very high percentage of really the psycho-emotionally challenged. I'm not saying like people that need to be diagnosed and whatever and be on medication. I'm just saying we all have a lot of trauma and issues in our emotional makeup. And so we have a hard time trusting. We have a lot of shame and embarrassment issues and pride issues that prevent us from sharing in a public way, even just with a person or a group of ladies or whatever you might have friends with or whoever. And so that level of honesty and openness is hard to come by in this group. And I don't mean just us, I mean in this Torah Observant walk, okay? And so the sad part is you guys need it more than they did, or back then, but you're not as capable of giving it now because you're so damaged and broken and wounded in those ways. Okay?
My third point is, the way I've learned to pray is really exciting to me because, again, letting go of trying to manipulate the Almighty and coming into a place where, and I want to run this by you, I know we look at Yeshua's prayer, the disciples' prayer, as the model prayer. And basically, yeah, that's fine. But when I go to pray now, it's about, I use a lot of Shaul's prayers. And it's about renewing the mind, like in Ephesians 1:16. He says he asks Father, give them a spirit of wisdom in the knowledge of you. Give them eyes that are enlightened to know what you expect of them, to know the riches of your glory, the future, to know the greatness of your power, the emunah. And in Ephesians 3, he says, in order that he might give you to be strengthened in the inner man by his Spirit. And I just find it's rewarding to pray that way because it flows with everything that you've been telling us you are working to get us to grow. And so I don't pray a lot of times, oh, please fix it. I might pray, show mercy, but I pray, do the inner work that will put them in a position where there's nothing blocking your highest blessing for them.
Right. And when you read Paul's words there, though, you can feel his emotion in a positive way, that he's empathetic and he loves these people. In all of his letters, after he's beating them up a little bit, he expresses how much he loves them and appreciates them, etc., in very strong ways. I kind of emulate that, I guess, a little bit too. But the thing is, think about this, all right? It's one thing to go before the Father and you start off with like the model prayer. You recognize who he is and all those kind of things, and then you kind of go through the process. And you can use that model, but the thing is, let's think about your loved one is gravely ill. And they may recover, they may not, or you have a child that's very ill and you have no idea what's happening. Your heart, you're crying, you're screaming out to Yah, you're praying, because it's showing him your love for that child or that spouse or that family member or friend, whoever it is that you're close to, right? And we should be able to do that all for each other if we're supposed to be the body. And so really, a lot of the praying for one another that Paul's talking about is that you're expressing to him how much you love them or that individual, the other person. Which is why I said this morning, but if you weren't there, I'll say it again. If a wife is having some issue and the husband asks me to pray for her, I won't. I'll ask him to pray for her and I'll stand with him in that prayer, because his heart and his concern and his love for her, I can't come close to. And that's why I think it's much more effective when a lot of wives will say that their husbands, when they pray for them, it's very powerful when they have need and when they're going through something horrible. It's because of how much they love you, and the Father is helping to honor that love, okay? So it's not so much manipulating them, but the Father may bless the situation because he sees how much you genuinely care. You may ask me to pray for you. I barely know you. I'm like, Father, please help them, whatever. I can't get emotionally invested in that level. But we should be able to get much more emotionally invested with each other than we generally do. But we don't, because we're not really trustworthy of that, a lot of us. Because when somebody does, we end up with some sort of a negative response that happens at some point and pay a price for that. So we're very cautious about getting that emotionally bonded and connected with people. Okay? So I have seen lots of answers to prayer come from a genuine person's love for someone else. Okay, and I will stand with them with that prayer. But I'd rather they pray than me. I don't have any magic just because I'm the rabbi or something. There's no more power there. But the husband who loves his wife, who's really distraught with what she's going through, and he's praying from his heart, that's powerful. My wife has had many, things that she was dealing with, with her health or whatever, that she asked me to come and pray. And when I pray, it almost always seems to work and fix pretty quickly, because Abba's honoring my heart, okay, for her. So I think a lot of it comes out of that place of love. And so that's what you were experiencing with the friends that you had back in the day, okay, which you're having a harder time finding today. It's because we're not as trusting today, okay? We're much more reluctant to bond on that level. All right, did that answer?
That's great. And just to finish up, I'd like to just say, in Christianity, we had a class of people that were kind of higher and above everybody. They were called prayer warriors. If they pray for you, something's really going to happen, Yeah. And I just want to just say, I am not claiming to be one of those people. I know that every one of us has gifts. Our personalities have gifts. Father gave me and others a certain personality that just flows. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to emulate,
No, but you have,
life.
but the thing is, you, with your personality and everything else, your makeup, genuinely can pray because you care about the person. And it's the caring that comes through. He wants us to love one another, right? As he loves us. And that caring has to come through. That's the difference, right? That's really the key. And so, and by the way, as far as prayer warriors, all of your chairs were prayed over before you got here today. Anybody been to a church that did that? What is that? What is that? No, they didn't pray over the chair. She didn't catch the joke. But I know people that go to congregations where, their prayer warriors come in early and pray over each chair. Okay, I don't know. Maybe they just want to make sure nobody gets hemorrhoids or something, but they're praying over the chairs. They're praying over those chairs. Got to protect those tushies. Anyway, I couldn't find the word that would be appropriate, so anyway. But look, the prayer warrior thing, I don't get it. I don't understand it. They're trying to say that basically they have some sort of power to make God do this or that or the other thing. I think a real prayer warrior is somebody that cares genuinely for some individuals and will go and stand before the Father asking on their behalf because you genuinely care, okay? See, Yeshua's prayers were the most effective because Yeshua had the most genuine caring for everybody. So it comes out of that genuine love and caring that the Father will say, yes, I'm going to honor that because one of the things I want you to do is care that much for somebody. And so to encourage you to keep caring that much, I'm going to honor that, heal this person or intervene in some way so that you'll be encouraged to keep caring that much about somebody. Does that make sense? All right, good. You're very welcome.
This week, I've been thinking a lot about legacy. And I've been thinking about our forefathers in Scripture. They have such tremendous legacies and of different kinds. So my question was, how should we be looking at legacy in our own lives?
Okay. I'm trying to think of a short answer. I actually taught this in the Level Up class. Okay, we talked about legacy. Mostly from a financial point of view, okay? So legacy essentially is what you're leaving behind for the future generations, what you're leaving behind for those that you're leaving behind, okay? Because you're older, you have children or grandchildren, whatever it is, and so your legacy is what you leave behind, all right? That's why we keep hearing about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I mean, that's part of the legacy. They did such tremendous things that they're still the ones that get named when we talk about our Creator, right? That he's the one he's their Creator, right? He's the one that they worshiped. All right, so for us today, some of your legacy is your reputation. Okay, part of legacy back in the day was your family name was a big deal. And, especially if the wealthy would have their estates and this and that, they would have this name, their name. And it was a big deal, by the way, if you shame that name. That could get you in trouble, might even get you killed. You could not embarrass the family, okay? So that was one form of legacy. So legacy has to do with reputation or your name, which we talked about in the No Other Name teaching about his legacy and his name and his reputation, okay? So the integrity and the reputation of your name, of who you are, is part of your legacy. You pass that down, all right? And we can look at it also from financial legacy. Are you providing for the generations? It says in Scripture, it says if you don't provide for your children's children, you're worse than an infidel. Now, by the way, providing for doesn't mean that you just give them everything. It just means that they are not going to suffer. There's something there to make sure that they have a way to get started and get on their feet and whatever it is. So you could do that through educational endowments. You could do that through different trusts and things. Of course, the first thing you'd have to do is make some money. You can't really do a financial legacy. So, we talked about in the Level Up class, financial from the point of view, first getting yourself healthy financially, then making sure to get some abundance going, and then looking forward towards charitable work, and then lastly towards legacy. Okay, and charitable stuff could also be part of your legacy. You set up something, if you have enough finances, that is doing a charitable thing out of those funds on a regular basis, okay? So the legacy is essentially what you leave behind that represents you, okay? Some people buy a wing of a hospital, okay? Some of you are gonna get your name on a plaque on our new building. That's part of your legacy. You donated and your name's gonna be on a plaque, okay? So did that answer the question? Sorta? Well, what didn't it answer?
I was thinking more from, the way we are improving ourselves if there's a way to look at legacy to,
Yeah,
the way we
I covered that, but I have to maybe kind of connect it more clearly.
yeah,
It's your reputation,
okay.
okay? So when people talk about you after you are gone, they'll talk about your journey and where you ended up. And that growth, mostly they'll probably talk about where you ended up. Those who knew you well may also be able to talk about your journey. Later on, they're only going to remember where you ended up more than anything else. So that personal growth is a part of the legacy, okay?
Yeah.
Because every one of you can think about a relative that's passed. You kind of have their legacy. You know what they were about, or what at least their reputation was as to who they were, what people remember about them. Legacy is what they remember about you, okay?
So if we keep legacy as a thought, that it might help us to improve in order to have a good legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of, you got to start off with step one, you got to work on the oxygen mask on yourself. Okay, so you got to get yourself healthy, and then you eventually, hopefully, you're setting an example and leaving behind something that others can then look to as a light that was shining, as an example that they can follow. Look, a lot of you, like Olivia came up here with all the pain she's in, right? Well, at some point, if she overcomes that, and I hope she does, I pray she does, she would have a story to tell. And that story could be part of a legacy, so to speak. It might inspire other people, okay? People that handle adversity, especially if that is something that's large and is then found out about and heard, it could inspire people. That could be part of the legacy, okay? Because I know that when I talk to people, like let's say you talk to your parents and your grandparents are no longer alive, or great-grandparents, whatever, what they will tell you about them is basically their legacy. That's what they remember. That's what they're known for. That's how they're seen, okay? How are people going to see you when you're gone? That's really what your legacy is. What will they say about you? How will they talk about you? What will they remember about you? What will be the things that they focus on? Does that more answer the question? Okay, good. Okay? That's the legacy, all right? See, we remember. It helps that it's written in the book, right? But not everything that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did is written in here. But these are the things that we were meant to remember about them. So it's written in here. By the way, a few people were not so honored in what they did that's written in here, and then we see them in a more negative light. They're the bad guys in the story, okay, instead of the good guys in the story. And so we see them, now, like take, for example, I don't know, Korach or Judas or somebody, right? They may have done all kinds of other things that were good, great, anything, but that's not the legacy they left. So something you might want to think about is how you finish is more important than how you start. Because they may have been fine up to a point, but if the end is what we remember, and the end is not good, that's going to be the legacy. Okay? Because Korach might have been a hell of a great guy up to a point. And so with Judas up to a point, because Judas was really the zealot who thought Yeshua was going to take whatever he was going to do right then and there. But then we don't remember any of that. Okay? Because the legacy ends up being how you finished. Paul, he was at one point very zealous, very active, very well-respected Jew, then tried to kill all the early believers, then became one of the apostles, so to speak, right? He became one of the sent ones. Not one of the 12, but he was still a sent one. Well, he had a few shifts, but we remember primarily how he ended up. But we also remember a little bit of the journey because it was part of how he ended up in this positive place. Because we got to hear some of that in the words, right? We got to read about that. Okay, so good question. Thank you for that. All right, Mr. Chris.
All right, so I have a couple Torah questions that are interesting situations.
We don't do Torah questions.
I know. I was thinking about a personal development question, but then I was like, I like Torah. So, no, I mean, I want to be able to make the right decision in any situation, hopefully.
Good. Good. We actually do Torah questions on Tuesdays from 11 to 11:15. Okay, just so you know. Every Tuesday. Okay, go ahead.
So I've been reading books on surviving and watching TV shows like Survive a Man. And the guy is always out there. He's not fasting when he's surviving. And he is eating a lot of animal foods, a lot of like insects and things that would not be usually kosher for us to eat. but
Okay,
he needs the protein.
there's no such thing as usually kosher.
I know.
It's usually kosher, but not today. I mean, what is that? I don't understand usually kosher. Yeah, it's usually kosher, but under this circumstance, that's not the way it works. All right, go ahead.
I know. So yeah, in those situations, not very common, but if it did happen, you got lost out in somewhere and there were plants, but let's say the plants weren't sure if they're poisonous or not, and you need the energy to make a shelter and a fire. You can't just fast. Would it be acceptable to eat something like an insect or something you could find like that?
All right, so there's, I guess, multiple ways to look at this, okay, based on how it's been looked at in the past. On the one hand, you have the story in Maccabees of Hannah and her sons, and they were basically told, you're going to get killed or you're going to eat this pork. And they said, not going to eat the pork, so they got killed. There's other, thought, Jewish thought has the idea of, when it's life and death, life comes above that Torah command if it means survival, right? So, of course, that's interesting because they also have the Maccabee story, which would have said the opposite. So there's different ways of looking at this, okay? Clean and unclean, this is just to get a right perspective, only makes you unclean till evening. It's not like, murdering somebody or causing some other harm outside of yourself. That's a much bigger problem, okay? To get stoning to death as a penalty for that. So if you were out there and you literally was life and death, you probably could eat almost anything and not have to be too concerned that's going to get you in that much trouble with the above, okay? I'm just, until you find yourself in that situation, all right? I mean, that's my best guess. Like I said, there's no real clear Torah answer to this. Not from the sages and everybody else that's ever written about it.
Yeah, because Yeshua was talking about like the ox in the ditch kind of scenario where
like an ox in the ditch.
Survival.
Okay, so for survival, I would say survival doesn't necessarily give you the breaking of commandments that would be causing harm to somebody else. All right, and so I guess that would be the thing. But of course, if someone's trying to kill you, okay, and you end up killing them, that's defense, that's not murder, right? So it's not the same thing. Because remember, the commandment isn't against killing, it's against murdering, okay? Because you may have to go to war, you may be attacked, you may have to defend yourself, and somebody may get killed, right? So that's not the point. But when we're talking about something like eating, and there's really nothing to eat but that, well, I would say probably that would be okay.
All right, and my other question was, so a couple weeks ago, I was sick. I had tried this different therapy where I injected myself with one of these things that my doctor said to do. And it, for some reason, caused lots of nausea and indigestion where I was kind of losing weight. And it was Shabbat. And I got some of my second tithe food in the mail. And so I got it. And I was pretty much at the point of not eating much at all. But of course, I'm hungry. And the second tithe stuff I had bought, because I had shipped it for Passover, was stuff that was something I could actually eat, kind of, a little bit of. Okay. And so I ate some of it, and then after Shabbat, I reimbursed myself with whatever cost it was to buy the food.
Sure.
So because I wanted to make sure I still had the second tithe money there, even though I was eating the second tithe food. So that's okay to do? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Look, Abba doesn't want you to misuse your tithe, but he also gives you, under emergency situations, that if you do, as long as you restore, and then he puts a little penalty on it normally to discourage you from doing it. But in this case, you couldn't eat anything, food showed up that you could eat and you were having this problem, sure. And then you made the effort to replenish, and in other words, buy it back with your own money that was not the tithe money to make sure your tithe was fine. That's perfectly appropriate, okay? I mean, these things can happen. I mean, emergencies can come up and then maybe, okay, so what are you gonna do? So you dip into the tithe, well, just make sure that you're supposed to put it back. Okay, that's kind of the simplicity of it, okay? I mean, he does want you to, use wisdom in your decisions. So if you have tithe to fix a problem and there's no other way to fix the problem, I would get counsel. Not about what you did. I mean, simple thing with food and whatever. But if you're having some other big emergency, you can't pay your rent or whatever it is, call and get counsel so we can help you understand the best way to handle your problem, okay? But we're not going to tell you, too bad, you have all this money over here, but you can't use it. Okay, we may just tell you that you qualify for benevolence, you might as well use your tithe instead of me giving you benevolence. You see what I'm saying? Under the circumstance. And so let us help make that right ruling. Okay, Melissa.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Rabbi, I was listening to, first of all, I want to thank Rebbitzin Julie for her protection speech because she led into what I want to talk about. And I was listening to Get Out the Leaven Part 2, and I had forgotten about hypocrisy, from last year, or it had just kind of slipped my mind for a while. And so you said in Part 2 that hypocrisy will make you blind, that it will cause you to be, I don't know, to me, I thought about being stopped up, one way or another. Nothing can move. And then I was talking to some people, and several people said to me, I no longer believe that Messiah came. And when I heard that, I was shocked beyond grief. And then I grieved because I was so shocked. But I was shocked too when I came out of the Christian world and came here, and you said that, JC was, I heard beware of false prophets, So I started thinking, well, is it true? But I'm analytical, so I think about things like that. And I didn't sleep for 2 days because I was just so grieved in my spirit about that. And I didn't understand really Judaism, but you've been talking about it. So can you please today help? Some of us just can't wrap our brains around that.
What is it you're not wrapping your brains around? Why people do what they do?
Why they say that there's no,
Okay.
I've been reading Isaiah 53 a lot, and, I believe in Messiah. I believe that he came.
All right.
But so.
I can do that. All right, first of all, I haven't really announced this. Probably should. I guess it's important. And I appreciate Rebbitzin during the announcements was pretty protective of me in certain ways. But the bottom line is, look, people come and go. I'm not upset about it. You shouldn't necessarily be upset about it. Everybody has to have their journey. What you do need to understand is 2 things are actually happening. One is that when people leave, they have a hard time just dealing with their emotions about where they were. Okay, some of you had a real hard time with Christianity when you left Christianity because you felt like they deceived me and they lied to me. Well, it was your journey and it was what it was. Just, learn the lesson, move on. You don't have to be angry with it, right? People decided for whatever reason not to be here. They don't need to be angry with you or me or anything about being here. The other part of this, which is what Melissa was talking about, is I need you guys to understand that the vast majority, we're finding out right now, are all going into Judaism. Okay, most of the people that left, I'm not wanting you to judge that. I just want you to understand they're all going into Judaism of some form. Okay? And so when you're thinking about the things they're saying about us, well, put that in a little bit of perspective that they're actually leaving most of this behind, period. Okay? And would that be right about the majority? Would you say, Elder, that it's been a good chunk of the people that have left lately, that's where they're going. Okay? Now, Melissa wants to understand why. Because that's what's probably stirred her up, is that somebody who left talked to her about this whole stuff. This is not going to be what you want to hear, all of you, okay? Everything about the above, you have to take on faith. Old Testament, New Testament, anything. There is no concrete thing that you can point to, okay, in itself that just says there's a God and Yeshua's the Messiah and all these other things. Yes, there are things written in this book that point to these things. And if you're going to use the old, we can look at things in the old that point to these things. Okay, and there's obviously the things in the new. There's obviously things that were written by other people who are outside of the scriptures that were historians that wrote certain things. What I'm saying is, it's not a concrete thing that's so simple to say. You have to have a thing called faith. And that faith comes from your experiencing through belief. Right? You believe, you act in a certain way through belief, and then you experience. And so, yes, we can look around and use logic to believe that this didn't come around just by accident, that it was intelligent design and created. Okay? But that doesn't mean we know who did it or how it came about. This tells us and claims a certain answer. So everybody's on a journey of figuring out those answers. Why are we here? And by the way, how did here even come to exist? Like, there's a here that we're like, because a lot of us want to ask the question, why are we here? How about just figuring out, how did here come to be? Okay? I mean, let's go even further back. Why am I here? What's here? Where did this come from? Okay? And so I want you to be much more patient with people on the journey. When I just told you a lot of them went into Judaism, don't judge them. And they maybe let go of Messiah. Don't judge them. Okay? Look, I've been on my own journey that took me out of everything because this book has got issues. Okay? In terms of the way it's been handled, inserts, translation problems, things that were taken out, and what I mean, it's got problems. I still believe it is the source that we can get the answers from, which is why I teach the way I do, right? But this book is not perfect. I believe in the original version it was. We don't have any originals, okay? Man has had his hands all over this thing. You don't need CSI to figure that out, okay? Looking for the fingerprints and whatever, okay? Man has had his hands all over this book. And so what happens is, it's easy to go listen to some of these, and I don't even have to name them for you, but go look at the postage people who've left it posting, you can know what some of the names are, all right? Who are very big anti-missionaries, who will go and attack the New Testament and say that there are inconsistencies and this and that and whatever. But you know what? If you're intellectually honest and have integrity, you'll do the same type of measuring with the old and find it has the same problems. Well, I shouldn't say the same problems. Different problems, but equally problematic, okay? Similar problems. Which is why if you go on this journey with integrity, you end up in nothing. I'm just saying that's the end of that journey. Some people stop the journey halfway. They'll leave the New Testament because they think it has problems and they don't know how to answer them, although I think I can answer them because I went on that journey and he gave me answers, which is why I came back, okay? I'm willing to talk to you about that. I mean, I've been back now for, I don't know, since 2010, so 15 years, okay? But I spent 7 years not having answers. Now, I didn't leave like some of them. I left because I didn't have answers and I was just looking for answers and waiting until I got answers. They're leaving going to something they think is the answer. And it's, in my opinion, it's not. It's part of the answer, okay? The Jews understand things to whatever degree, so it's part of the answer. They were the original group leading into what we do, okay? But you gotta understand, I can't give you the definitive in some sort of concrete way. I believe definitively, a lot of you do, but it's a belief, okay? And so that's really where the rubber meets the road. It's a faith thing. It's a faith and belief thing, all right? Now, you can have, in your own experiences, what you believe is some concrete evidence of things, all right? You can. Now, for me, it's very simple, all right? This is part of my story, my journey, I guess. You know, I grew up without any belief system. It was secular Jewish. I mean, yes, I was raised and went to Hebrew school and whatever, but we really didn't keep Torah. We kind of like the Christmas, Easter Catholic. We did very little, okay? We weren't doing very much, okay? We weren't keeping Sabbath every week, and we didn't eat kosher all the time and whatever. But we did go to what they would call the high holy days, trumpets and atonement, right? We did keep the Passover. We did a Seder or two. We had some candles lit on Hanukkah. You know, we did some of the very traditional cultural things to do in terms of the limited way we kept the spiritual stuff, all right? So I wasn't really raised with any of this, so I know what life was like without it, all right? My family didn't have any beliefs. We just did it because we were born Jewish and culturally stuff. You understand what I mean? Then I came into belief, and I know what my life was like when I was walking in belief. And then I went on that journey for 7 years, and for 7 years, guess what? I wasn't believing anything, was looking for answers, didn't have anything, and I know what life was like again with nothing, okay? And then he brought me back, long story, but we're not gonna go into it, but he brought me back, and now I know once again, 15 years of evidence of what it's like, again, to be walking in belief. And I can tell you, there's no contrast. I mean, there's no comparison. It's a great contrast. I mean, there's, you know, this tremendous difference between the two. They're not even close. So that's my concrete, all right? For me, that's like, okay, life was, whatever word you want to put for not great, then life was really heading in a very nice direction. Then it was, again, really not good. And then again, things working in a very nice direction. Okay, that's my experience, which gives me the strength that I teach with, because I come from a place of, I believe very strongly in what I teach you. And that stuff is all coming from the claims of this book. Okay? Now, then there are those who will say, well, I don't believe the claims of that book. That's a fair statement. Lots of people don't believe the claims of this book. Okay? I mean, Judeo-Christians do not make up everybody on the planet. There's a whole lot of people that don't believe anything that has to do with this book. Jews believe half the book. Christians believe half the book, maybe. Okay, the other half of the book. All right? Then there's us who are Messianic, who kind of believe the whole book. But we're not the majority by any way, shape, or form, right? We're not the majority in terms of that. And so this is a faith thing. This is a between you and him thing, all right? Of course, you got to start off believing that there is a him or something. Okay? And there are people that have come up with all kinds of concepts of what that is. The universal mind or the whatever. I mean, whatever it is that they come up with. I mean, some of you are worldly enough, meaning that you have enough experience in the world to know there's all kinds of ways that people conceive of a higher power. All right? And it doesn't all have anything to do with what this teaches. It takes all kinds of other forms. And so you hear me all the time. I'm not afraid of where people end up. You freak out because you're afraid of where they're going to get up, and it disturbs you and it makes you afraid of everything. Stop freaking out about that stuff. Where they're going to end up is their journey, and that's between them and their creator, period. Okay? Where you end up is between you and your creator, period. Okay? All right? Now, so let's not judge them. Okay? I mean, one of the reasons he let me go on the journey I went on is because how could I judge anybody when I know I've been on that journey? But also, I also know how to get back. I know the path back, and I know what brought me back. So if anybody that left wants to talk to me, I can help them understand, by the way, this is where that ends up, and this is the path back. But that's, neither here nor there. This is an individual activity done in a group setting, okay? This life that you have is personally between you and your creator, done in a group dynamic. And so let's stop freaking out and worrying about where everybody else is going to end up. And that's why they should stop attacking us. You don't agree with us? Good. Go do something else. If anybody else in here thinks whatever you're thinking, then they'll leave too, like you did. Most of the people haven't left because they don't agree with you about the things that you think about me or Elder or Rabbi Tom or what we do here. So leave them alone. They're on their journey, you're on yours. Okay? And you can argue all you want that, well, we're doing this, and we're taking advantage, or we're abusing in some other way. Well, go ask all the people that are blessed. Okay? You heard a lot of stuff in the zone too if you were listening to that today. People saying how blessed they are for what we're doing. Okay? So a lot of people are being blessed. Maybe it wasn't you. Well, that's okay. I'm sorry it wasn't you. Okay? Sadly, most of the time it was you up to a point, and then you decided it wasn't you anymore. Okay? Because we did bless you. For most of you. Some people that left I never even got to interact with much because you never contacted us very much. All right? But the thing is, let's us, like Melissa, okay, as you were talking about this, let's not get overly upset with people's choices. It's their journey. The journey's not over. Let them go on their journey. I'm in a much stronger place now in my belief than I was before my journey. Okay? I have the blessing, curse, whatever you want to call it, the blessing, I think, of having nothing, this, nothing, and then this. I can say that I have twice both, and I know what they both were the same each time. The nothing was the same both times, and this was the same both times. You see what I'm saying? It's not like it was different each time. Nothing, all the stuff was exactly the same the second time, and nothing. This was the same both times. Okay? The peace that I have, the understanding that I have, the shalom that I have, the blessings that I find are happening, okay? The answers and understanding that I have about life, okay? People with nothing have no understanding of any of that stuff. They just exist. Because what else is there if you have nothing? You have nothing, there's just existence. Which means you just have however many score plus whatever, and that's it. I mean, you just have 80, 100 years, and Nothing to look forward to and nothing else happening, and that's it. Look, at least the ones that have something like the religious belief systems that at least have reincarnation, and at least they give you the hope that there's another thing, although you could end up being a bug or a rock or a tree or something, okay, in some of their belief systems. But at least it's not just this, okay? I mean, I guess that's better than just believing all we have is this. But there's a lot of people that just believe this is all we have. That's got to be really rough because this could really suck. Okay? And if this is all there is, I wouldn't want to be Olivia with all the pain she's in and knowing that this is all there is. If that's it, that would be awful. And we have people that we know that are in situations where their bodies are broken down or other things are just not working right. And if this is all there is, that'd be pretty depressing. I don't know how people live without a hope. Okay? Now we believe that Messiah, Yeshua, came and was a part of bringing that hope. Now, those who leave the New Testament behind, go back into Judaism or go into Judaism, whatever, for the first time, whatever, they go into Judaism, they don't believe he provides that. But they still might believe in a hope because the Jewish idea still provides for a future millennial thing. It still provides for a Messiah thing. That's part of their journey, okay? I don't think there's a whole lot, though, from Genesis to 2 Chronicles or Genesis to Malachi, depending on your Bible, okay, in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, that teaches anything really about personal development. And you becoming a different person, there's a lot of do's and don'ts. Like you talk to a child, don't touch that, pick up your stuff, put that away, right? Don't eat that before dinner. That's how you talk to a kid. All the personal development stuff you're growing is in the New Testament. All of it. Sure, there's a little bit of wisdom distilled in some of the things like, the Proverbs, for example, okay? But still, it's not personal development. It's just saying the fool ends up like this and the wise person does this. I mean, it's not really that kind of developmental thing. So look, I feel for them, you should feel for them, but I don't feel for them in a way that you might because I know they have to go through their journey. I just wish they would do it without throwing rocks at me on the journey. Just go on your journey. Stop turning around and throwing rocks at me, okay? You got your journey. I'm not attacking you, okay? Now, I have told people that I don't encourage you to hang out with the people on their journey because unless you want to be pulled into their journey, that would be something that you could be susceptible to. So be careful with that. Because almost everybody that we see, what happens is the people that leave, then we find out other people leave are the same people that are hanging out with the people that left. And so they're influenced. Some of you have had that happen, but you didn't go in. You almost did. Melissa said that, right? You almost got pulled into it, but then you didn't. It's, right? Same thing, okay? It's challenging, okay, to get pulled in with the other people. Because they're all doing something emotionally. Emotion is very powerful and seductive and to be pulled into. Okay? People aren't seduced into and sucked into logic. They're going, okay, that's just logic. But emotion, well, can you believe they're doing this? Do you know they did this to this person? Do you know they did blah, 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 blah? All that emotion. Okay? And if you had any negative thought, you're like, oh, I knew it. Because they just fed right into your negative thought. You had a little negative feeling about me or Elder or whoever, and then it's like, oh, yeah, see, other people felt that way. And next thing you know, you're right off to the races. This is an individual journey. Be careful who you hang out with because they're going to suck you into their journey. Now, unless that is your journey, that's fine. I mean, if that's where you're supposed to be, fine. But just realize one bad apple does not work the same as one good apple. One bad apple ruins the bunch. One good apple doesn't fix the bad ones, okay? You never hear a proverb that says you take a bad bunch of apples and put a good one in there and it fixes it. But you take a good bunch of apples and stick a bad one in there, the whole thing goes. Only the ones that stay together with the bad apple. You take some of the good ones out and they're fine. It's the ones that stay hanging out with the bad apple. Now, I'm not want to call them bad apples. They're on a different journey, okay? I was using an analogy. I don't want you to get me wrong. I'm not mad at them. You shouldn't be. I don't have any negative anything towards them. I understand that they have to do their journey. I'm just disappointed that they have to throw rocks while they're doing it. Does that make sense? Okay? All right? So when we talk about answering Melissa's question, look, I'm sorry, I can't give you a definitive thing. You have to experience your own. He has to touch you, as I talked about in the Father and the Son, and he develops that relationship with you. And if he's pulled you to have that relationship through this and through Messiah, the one that we believe in, all right, not the one that maybe the Jews are expecting to come someday, but through Messiah, well, then that's your journey, okay? That's your journey. At some point, I'll teach more that I think will help you with more of this in other broad spectrum ways. But for right now, let's just kind of take that as the encouragement, okay? All right? Get away from the heaven, hell, fire and brimstone Christian thought process that these people are doomed and they're going to get. The Creator is very compassionate and he has a plan for everybody. It does say that if possible, he desires that all men get there, be delivered, be saved, right? So I think he has a plan that makes that at least possible, which means that I'm not going to worry about anybody that ever lived or is living now and whatever they're doing, okay? So let's just kind of keep that in mind and chill down, shalom those emotions, okay? You know, let's slow them down and shalom them down and just realize what you need to be worried about is how do you actually feel about where they're going and do you want to go there? And if you do, that's your journey, go. Just stop throwing rocks on the way, okay? Go do your journey. And by the way, I'm a very useful tool if you're going to go on that journey. I'm not going to attack you, but I have been on that journey. And I can maybe help you with some of that stuff if you want to ask. And don't expect to get attacked. This is not Christianity. I'm not going to attack you like you were attacked when you left the church and told you were going to hell and told you were, lost your salvation or whatever else they told you, okay? You leave here, it's your journey. I am not worried about you, okay? You have to do what you have to do. I don't want you taking others with you just because you're spewing negativity. All right? If you want to share with people, I got excited about something and I want to share it, fine. So they'll share it with you and whatever. But if it's just all coming with attacking, why would you want to go anywhere because you're feeding into someone's attacking? Someone says to you, look, I just don't believe Messiah is Messiah anymore. That's not necessarily an attack. They might say, well, why do you believe that? And they may have a discussion and maybe you'll end up agreeing with them. That's your journey. I'm not worried about that. That's your journey. I just don't understand the attacking. Okay? I watch a lot of people come out of the churches and they want to attack the churches. Well, they lied to us. Yes, they did, but that's not, so what? You were allowed to be there, and now you're not. Be happy you're not. Why do you have to get all mad at them? And then you post all these ugly posts against them and everything else. Why? What's the point? Okay? And all of you thinking, well, I need to save my friends from this or that. They're on their own journey. You don't need to save them from anything. The Creator's got them in his hand. Whatever belief system you have, whether you believe Messiah has come or not, the Creator has everybody. It's between him and them, okay? Now, unless something is literally dangerous, there's nothing to protect anybody from, okay? And there's nothing literally dangerous happening in most groups. They just teach things that are different than each other, and they might not think that whatever, this one's wrong or this one's wrong, whatever, but there's nothing dangerous happening in most congregations, okay? If there are, those congregations usually don't last very long. And so we don't have anything dangerous happening here. We just believe some things that maybe you don't like or don't like the way we handle things or whatever. That's your personal preference and your journey, okay? And I think that's important that we kind of get that out there. So thank you, Melissa, for bringing that up, because I think that would help. Now, hopefully that helped you a little bit, at least with an answer, okay? But unfortunately, maybe fortunately, this is a faith journey, okay? I know that could look like anything, but it is what it is. It's a faith journey, okay? We all agree? We understand? Okay? And so when people don't understand what you're doing, it's because your beliefs and your faith has you here and theirs doesn't. So when you talk to your Christian friends and they can't understand you, it's because their faith journey has them where they are. Yours has you here. I believe there's a popping of a bubble that affects that, okay? That's just the way I've interpreted it, and I think most of you have noticed that that's kind of the way it kind of works and that you've seen. Okay. All right, anyway, that was a long-winded answer, but I think it was an important answer. Hopefully that, will help some of you, on this journey. But please, if you know people that have left, or people that have left start contacting you, just understand, let them do their journey. Don't argue and fight with them, and just know that they will prefer that you go with them than stay where you are. Just like you, when you contact all your Christian friends, you'd rather them come where you are than where they are now. So don't be surprised if they do that. However, what you shouldn't tolerate is the attacks. Say, hey, I know you're deciding to go somewhere else. Talk to me about that. Don't talk to me about why you're mad at where you were. Doesn't that make sense? Tell me why you're excited about where you're going. I don't want to hear about why you're upset about where you were. Because that's not important to me. If you're leaving because you're upset about something, that's not the reason to leave. If you're going someplace because you really think that's the right place to go, that's a good reason to go somewhere. Okay? Did that work for everybody, sort of? All right, good. All right, Michael and Ashley.